There's a law in you. You lived your whole life with an internal compass. You've always had a sense, to your own standard, okay, of right and wrong. By the way, your standard may not be the next person sitting next to you's standard. But you always had a sense of right and wrong. There were lines you would not cross and lines that you would cross in a heartbeat. That doesn't mean it's the same lines that the person next to you would cross in a heartbeat or not cross. This is the law of sin and death. You thinking you figured out what's right and wrong. But there's a law that's not in your members by default that you must bring in, the Torah law, the law of life, the spirit, the mindset of spirit, that which is above. Think about it from that, I hate to bring in that Kabbalistic mindset, right? That which is above, which is the way Yah does things and all the other stuff that's in the heavenlies, and then that which is below, which is our human fleshly way of doing things. If you're going to think, act, and be here in this world, not his, then you're going to end up dead. Because this world, things live and they die. In the heavenlies, does anything die? No. You're going to think like, act like, and be like the heavenlies. He's going to give you and bestow upon you that which is going to not die. It's not complicated, but it requires a titanic amount of effort to fight the struggle of the enmity that there is between the flesh mind that's in you by default and the spirit mind that you need to embrace by action. You have to actively embrace the spirit mind. I'm hoping that you're getting this. It's going to be, I know, for some of you hard because of the way the word spirit was always used in the churches you grew up in. I have to use the word think, but don't overthink this. Okay? Paul's being very clear. There is no condemnation if you walk in Messiah, who don't walk according to the flesh. That's verse 1 here. You're walking according to Messiah. What way is that? Torah observance. So there's no condemnation when you're doing that. Guess what, though? If you choose to walk in the flesh and not according to the Spirit, then you have condemnation that you bring on yourself. Because the Torah of the Spirit of the life in Messiah Yeshua has set me free from the law of sin and death. In other words, it showed me a way out. It didn't just release it so it doesn't exist anymore. It shows you if you keep Shabbat, if you keep the feast instead of keeping this other stuff, if you eat differently, if you treat people in a certain manner, if you treat your Creator in a certain manner, if you make all of these adjustments in your life, you are now free from sin, because there's no sin if you're doing the things that are right, and there's no death. So when he set you free, he didn't just like set you free, meaning, okay, that's it, you're free. It'd be like saying to a criminal, here you are in a jail, I set you free, that like now no matter what you do, you don't end up back in jail. Like there's nothing you can do now to end up back in jail. That's what that would be like. The way the world has taught you this, it'd be like, well, I've been set free from sin and death. So you can't sin anymore? You can't go and sleep with someone not your spouse? You can't go and murder somebody? You can't go steal something? You can't go, worship your Elohim in a way that's worshipped by pagans? You can't do idolatry? You can't do those things? So what's he saying when he says, I've been set free? I have been shown a way to be free of those things that lead wrongly. I thought they led to life, but they lead to death. Now I know. I'm going to go over here real quickly. See if I can turn to it on the first shot, off by one page. Okay, John 8. See if I can squeeze this in real fast. John 8, these words are quoted all the time. In verse 31, Yeshua says to the Yehudim who believed, if you stay in my word, you are truly my disciples, my taught ones, and you shall have a relationship, you shall know the truth, and the relationship with that truth shall what? Make you free. That's what's going on. That's what Paul is talking about in Romans. Okay? That's what he's talking about. He's saying, look, knowing that truth and then acting upon it in a relational way, otherwise it's just information and it's useless, will make you free. From what? The law of sin and death. Because that law only leads to sinning and death. When you were eating pork, you didn't know you were sinning. You thought you were doing fine. When you were keeping Sunday and Christmas and Easter and all these other things, you thought you were doing fine. You didn't think you were sinning. See, but in your mind, in the law in your head, you thought you were doing the right things. But that law still had you sinning, which would lead eventually to death. And that's the freedom that he now gives you. This is why James can talk about the Torah of freedom. He says, when you can go look into the Torah of freedom in James chapter 2 or the end of chapter 1, whichever it is, okay? Now making me have to look it up. Okay, chapter 1 and verse 25, all right? But he who looked into the perfect Torah of that of freedom and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of the work, this one shall be blessed in his doing of the Torah. See the consistency? Paul says it, James says it, Yeshua says it, Moses is trying to tell us that. Yahweh's teaching us these things. But are you going to receive it, though?